The Shadow.
Dead Proof Past, Now, Read presents another entry in our anthology of stories that need to be told. Dead Proof. If you have a story that needs to be told, email it to stories@PastNowRead.com. If you like this story, stay tuned each Friday evening for the next episode. Now, Dead Proof. Enjoy. The Dead Bull. The stench hit first. Hot copper and rot, clinging to cinder block walls like the memory of old fires. I stretched long across the blood-stained tiles, a black seam stitched to the floor. Under the work lamp, the vet's scalpel trembled as it parted the hide of the bull, laid out rigid on the table. His gloves squeaked, his breath fogged the inside of his mask, and his eyes kept flicking to the corner where the light bent wrong. Where I was, cartilage snapped, muscle peeled. The room held its breath. As the cut widened, the light faltered, and my shape elongated. Drawn toward what no animal should carry, fibrous tissue threaded with faint red veins that glimmered, pulsing like wires under glass. My edge wavered. For a heartbeat, the thing beneath the lamplight seemed to move on its own, a ripple that swallowed illumination and fed it back strange. The scalpel slipped, metal clattered. This isn't normal contamination, the vet whispered, trying to convince himself the corners weren't moving. Not feed, not toxins. I poured up the wall and along the lamp's stalk, thinning to a blade. The pattern wasn't disease, it was design, as precise as the neat slashes of the cut, the signature of someone who planned a death before the beast was born. The samples were sealed in sterile tubes and boxed for overnight transport to the National Veterinary Services Laboratories. The vet soothed the rancher with a lie about tainted feed, but his stare kept snagging on the glimmering tissue and on me, where the lamp's shadow should have ended but didn't. Outside, floodlights pooled against the fence line of the nearby military base, towers casting hard lattices across dirt and scrub. My form ran along the chain links like spilled ink. Beyond the barbed wire, land parcels stitched together into an unnatural quilt, quietly bought by a shell company with distant owners and nearer intentions. The courier van bounced through the ruts, headlights carving a tunnel through dust. I flattened across its doors as it passed, a stripe that flickered and vanished. In the rear glass, I saw the vet's hands shaking. When results came back, if they came back, they wouldn't be ours to read. Somewhere past the perimeter, in the paperwork, someone was already waiting to take them. The ranch and the land deal. The first muzzle flash tore the night open. Silent shots spit white needles into the dark, and ranch hands dropped into the mud. I bled thin along the fence line, only a smear where no light should have reached, while trained boots hammered gravel near the pens. "Who's sending the samples?" A voice snapped, accent cut clean on Beijing steel. A gloved fist yanked a ranch hand upright. The man didn't look at faces. He looked for angles of light the way professionals do. He didn't see me. No one ever does, not until they feel the cold of being watched. A whistle cracked across the pasture. Up on the ridge, a woman stood against the sky, rain jacket flapping like a torn flag, shotgun leveled. She didn't aim at flesh. She blasted the ground. A warning. Dust leapt, men scattered, and one curse in a language that didn't belong here slid under the wind. I streaked along the slope and stretched at her feet, a ragged shape clinging to her boots. The barrel tracked me first, then drifted past, confused by the way shadow fell where nothing stood. "You're not with them," she said, not quite a question. Her voice shook, not from fear, but rage held at the edge of use. "I'm not," I said, and my words came the way they always do now, a low vibration in the air, the sound of heat memory crawling over stone. She lowered the gun. Up close, grief had carved her face into something precise. "My brother asked about this land 2 years ago. He never came home." She thumbed a folded map, paper soft from handling. "Cattle keep dying the same way, and every deed points here." She tapped a boundary line hugging the military fence. Shell companies, boardrooms half a world away. We moved. She on her feet, me in her shadow, stretched and thin as we traced the fence. The parcels formed a ring, a noose tightening around the base. "They aren't buying to graze," she said. "They're buying to bury." Engines grumbled beyond the ridge. Headlights crawled in convoy. Tarps pulled taut over heavy crates. Rain hissed down, turning dust to paste. I climbed the fence in a single black line and poured across the road to see, flattening into the wet. Soldiers waved the convoy through the gate, only they didn't turn toward the base. They turned onto the ranch road, onto land that belonged to the shell. "Move," I murmured, and she didn't ask where. She ran, low, following a dark path that only exists when light is frightened. The trucks disappeared into a cut in the hillside, an access tunnel nobody claimed on any map. A crate rattled. Something inside banged hard enough to bow steel. The rain swallowed the sound. The night swallowed everything else. The lab tampering. The call, Chimam at 3 a.m., when the world's shadows are longest. "Your sample's been corrupted," a hoarse whisper said. "You didn't hear it from me." The line died. The silence after tasted like a threat. I arrived before dawn at the National Veterinary Services Laboratories. Streetlights threw thin spears across glass and concrete. I flowed under them, a seam at the base of the entrance doors. Inside, refrigeration units hummed, a mechanical choir, but the shelf where our tubes should have been sat empty, labels dangling like tags on ghosts. A scientist with eyes that hadn't slept hurried into a side corridor. He didn't look for a person. He looked for a place where the fluorescent buzz dropped a note, a blind spot, and found me. He snapped a folder open and let it tumble to the linoleum so no human hand passed to mine. Papers fanned wide. I spread over them, reading by the way light strained across lines of type. "Not bacteria," he whispered. "Not viral. Protein architecture. Folds engineered to pass through inspection, like prions, but tuned. You see the chain quietly. It spreads before anyone names it." Down the hall, 2 men drifted by in gray suits with almost credentials. Badges flashed quick enough to confuse. The scientists swallowed. They told us the samples were mislogged. Then they took our server off network. Every monitor blinked. A message scrolled in dead, hospital green. "System override. Data purge in progress." Screen after screen went black, like lights blinking out in a building on fire. The hum of the refrigeration had deepened, an animal drawing breath. "They'll shut me down," he said. "They'll shut you down." His voice cracked on the last word, because he knew there was no "you" to lay a hand on. "Go." I lifted from the papers as the suits turned back. He kicked the folder down the hall. Pages skittered like leaves in a draft. The men followed the paper, because paper is visible, and I wasn't. Outside, sodium lamps cut shadows into hard slabs. She stood at the edge of one, jaw tight, scanning for the things she had learned to trust. The wrong shape of darkness moving where it shouldn't. "Well," she asked. "They're erasing it," I said. "Everything." Her phone buzzed. A single text burned. "Stop asking questions, or you'll join the cattle." Her knuckles went bloodless around the glass. "They know me." Sirens flared close. We turned. Too late to warn the scientist. He pitched forward onto the asphalt, a thin dart angled in his neck. No struggle, just the slack hush of a switch flipped. The gray suits didn't run to him. They looked up. Their eyes swept the spaces between lights, hunting for a thing that shouldn't exist. They weren't chasing him. They were coming for us, for the woman who could still be erased, and for the shadow she followed. The storm. Rain drilled the highway in sheets, turning the world to smeared glass. She drove, jaw set, hands bone white on the wheel, while I went ahead of the headlights, a flat ribbon unspooling across the flooded road to show where the gravel rose and where it broke away. Behind us, black SUVs chewed at distance, their beams jittering through the downpour like knives. "Left," I said, and the word was wind moving the wrong way. She yanked the wheel. The truck slewed into a low-service lane, tires spitting stones that cracked like bones under loads too heavy. "They knew we'd be at the lab," she said, eyes burning. Someone fed them our trail. Lightning tore the sky open. For a bright strobe, I saw her face, the fear, the stubbornness, and then I was a long black wound across the dash again. "My brother vanished out here," she whispered. "I found his truck. No body, just blood in the cab." The road bucked, a pothole, punching us both against our restraints. I stretched out the windshield, thin and quick, tracing a line through the worst of it. "You're not alone," I said. "And even in a storm, a voice can be a hand you don't have." Floodlights pulsed ahead, an artificial dawn squirming through rain. A convoy trudged the ridge, canvas tarps sagging under the weight of steel crates that rattled with something alive. Engines were nearly lost in the weather, but the vibration erode the water with a best that found your ribs. She killed the engine and let us ghost into tall grass. Rain soaked her hair flat, glued paper maps to her jacket. I climbed the blades, smearing along each stalk, and looked down into the cut of earth where the hill had been opened like a wound. An access tunnel waited, unmarked, squared by concrete. Soldiers shouted in tight bursts, struggling to contain whatever writhed inside those boxes. Lightning licked the sky. In that electric freeze, I saw it, a wet, sinewy shape, slam against bars, its own shadow colliding with me for a keening instant before it vanished again. She drew a revolver from inside her jacket, old, scarred, clean. "If this goes underground, no one will ever know." Her voice didn't tremble. "We go inside." I widened across her jacket like a second skin. "Stay behind the places they forget to light." A metallic clack snapped behind us, the unmistakable ratchet of a rifle bolt. Rain turned red for a breath as a laser burned through it. The dot trembled over her heart. I stretched to smother it, but shadows don't stop bullets, and the shooter had already taken aim. The shadow strikes. The shot split Rain. She dove. Mud burst where her chest had been. I flared across the slope, slicing the scope's sightline. His second round missed. She fired back. A body tumbled. Floodlights bloomed. Sirens wailed. I stitched a path of black to the access tunnel. She followed my trail into the hillside, boots slapping water, revolver clenched like it could still balance the scales. The tunnel opened into a throat of concrete. Red bulbs pulsed, painting the corridor like an artery. I spread along walls, smearing across cameras until their eyes blinked white static. The air pressed tight, heavy with bleach, rust, and something biological that hadn't earned a name. Through glass windows, I saw tanks of milky fluid, tissue trays arranged in surgical precision, clipboard headings read like a coded confession. Feed chain inoculation, conformational templating, rendering, cover logistics. Not accident, not infection, design. Her breath fogged the glass. "Cattle first," she whispered. Then the people who asked questions. Her reflection in the pane stared back, fractured by red strobes. Then my brother. We moved deeper. Crates like the ones from the convoy stood stacked 3 high, bolted into cages. Steel braced steel. A hollow clang rang out as something inside slammed its body against bars. Wet breath hissed between slats. For an instant, I saw its shadow collide with mine, and its edges weren't stable. They frayed, as if even light couldn't decide what it was. She stumbled back, revolver rising. "What are they doing?" "Making what shouldn't be," I said. Footsteps came, unhurried, deliberate. Floodlights hissed alive from every angle. My body shattered into torn wafers, fractured across walls and ceiling. I was everywhere, yet nowhere strong enough to hide. A man entered. Badge flashed fast, the kind designed to be forgotten. He didn't scan the room. He looked directly at me, the fragments trembling on walls. "You again," he said softly. "The record purge should have erased you." Memory surged, accelerant fumes, paper curling black, a warehouse collapsing into itself, while I screamed and became something less, something flat. He had been there. He had ordered it. "Containment lights," he said. Panels blazed a surgical noon. I thinned, pulled taut as wire. She raised her revolver. Red dots bloomed on her chest. 6 rifles trained from catwalks. Her lip curled, but her knuckles trembled. "Stand down," the man told her, calm as a priest. We learned from the fire. Shadows can be salted. You can be erased. Vents opened with a hiss. White aerosol bled in, refracting beams into shards. Each slice cut me smaller, scattering me until I was no more than slivers quivering in corners. The man stepped closer, eyes lit by the cruelty of certainty. Say his name, he whispered. Remember what you were. That's all it takes. Her breath cracked. Whose name? His, the man said, pointing at me. The one we burned. Say it and he's gone. Her finger tightened on the trigger. I thrashed against light, splitting into 1,000 paper-thin pieces, desperate not to vanish. Don't, I hissed, my voice the scrape of fire on steel. If you speak it, I'm gone. Rifles clicked, ready. Lights flared hotter. My form scattered until I was almost nothing. She screamed and fired. The man is staggered, blood blooming across his chest. Rifles barked, but she had already dropped, rolling behind the cage. Bullets chewed steel. I surged across muzzle flashes, cutting beams, blinding eyes. Chaos tore the air. Smoke filled the corridor. In the confusion, her hand found mine, not flesh to flesh, but her shadow gripping me against the floor. Not yet, she muttered. We ran together, one in body, one in dark. Behind us, the man's blood spread black under floodlight, but his eyes stayed open. He smiled through the ruin. Burn it all, he coughed, and then alarms howled, the facility sealing for destruction. The world became fire again. Explosions rolled through ducts, cages collapsing in domino screams. White mist ignited, flames coughing down corridors like dragon's breath. Soldiers fled. Some never made it past the collapsing roof. She staggered through smoke, hacking, revolver clutched but useless now. I surged ahead, cutting a dark path where flames hadn't reached. We burst into daylight as the hillside belched black cloud. She fell to her knees in mud, coughing until blood streaked her teeth. I spread across the ground beside her, wrapping her shadow into mine. For a moment we were one. They buried him here, she gasped. My brother, this place, all of it. Yes, I said, and more. They'll bury the truth again. Behind us, the facility burned hotter, a furnace, devouring evidence. Crates ruptured. The things inside shrieked and then fell silent. Ash spiraled upward in a storm of secrets. They'll keep building, she whispered. They always do. Her eyes lifted to the horizon. Through haze and rain, headlights rolled. Another convoy. Trucks sealed, cattle trailers leading, each container heavy with something that didn't belong in daylight. Her jaw set. Then we follow. I stretched long across the wet road, already reaching for their beams. Fire makes ash of everything but me, and this time, I wasn't leaving the world to burn alone. You have been listening to Dead Proof, produced and adapted for audio narration by PastNowRead. Stories that need to be told. If you have a story that needs to be told, email it to stories@PastNowRead.com. Please subscribe, like, and hit that bell for future updates. If you like this story, stay tuned for the next episode, each Friday evening. Follow for more. If you like our stories, please tag with someone who may also like PastNowRead, stories that need to be told. Thank you. All content and images are copyrighted by Faux House, LLC, 2025. All rights reserved.